Ever feel like sometimes uh, the world is changing faster than ever? I mean, like really fast.
Yeah.
Well, imagine living through a time when empires were being reshaped by like all these new ideas, fierce rivalries, ambitious rulers, That's the world we're like stepping into today.
Hmm.
As we like explore the Safavid dynasty of Iran, this dynasty, and not only like survived, but they thrived for over 2 centuries.
Yeah, it is fascinating, isn't it? We're talking about a period longer than even the Tudors held sway over in England.
Wow.
And what's really interesting is that the Safavids weren't just some like royal family, who inherited power.
Right.
Their story starts with like a spiritual movement,
Okay.
a Sufi order that gradually transformed into a political powerhouse.
Wow. So not your typical rise to the top.
No, not at
It
all.
sounds like a recipe for struggles. You've got this really deeply spiritual foundation mixed with the ambition to rule this vast empire. How did that play out in the way they governed?
Well, that's where we start to see the Safavids' real genius for pragmatism and adaptation. They didn't try to, impose a rigid one-size-fits-all system on their diverse territory.
Right.
They embraced the complexity. So they wove together like a tapestry of cultures, languages, even religions.
Okay, so hold on. I'm picturing this map with clearly defined borders, everyone speaking the same language, all following the same faith. You're saying that wasn't the Safavid world.
Not at all. While Persian was certainly like a prominent language and had a prominent cultural influence, the Safavid realm was much more fluid. Think of it as a network of like interconnected regions, each with its own distinct character, all held together by this like shared allegiance to the dynasty.
So unity through diversity,
Mm,
not uniformity.
great.
But that raises the question, how do you maintain control in an environment like that? It sounds like a recipe for chaos, with everyone pulling in different directions.
That's where the Safavids' political savvy really shines through. They were masters at like forging alliances, bringing different groups into the fold, offering them tangible benefits for their loyalty, things like land grants, prestigious titles, even strategic marriage alliances.
Wow. It sounds like they created a system where everyone had a stake in the dynasty's success.
Exactly.
Smart move. But I've also heard some pretty intense stories about the early Safavids, particularly Shah Ismail. He was the founder. Didn't he have a reputation for being, well, ruthless?
I saw Ismail, yeah. He's a really complex figure who often gets painted in extremes. There are accounts of him destroying tombs, particularly those associated with his Sunni rivals.
Wow.
But it's crucial to remember that historical sources can be biased. They're often shaped by political agendas of those who wrote them.
So the image of Shah Ismail as this, like, uncompromising zealot might be a bit of an oversimplification.
Exactly. While he certainly used religion to legitimize his rule and consolidate his power, we have to look deeper into the context of his actions. Remember, he was forging a new dynasty in a region with a long history of religious and political turmoil.
Right.
So his actions were likely as much about asserting his authority and solidifying his rule as they were about religious fervor.
It's a good reminder that history is rarely black and white. There are always layers of complexity to uncover. So we've got this dynasty built on a foundation of both spiritual and political power, skillfully navigating this really diverse and often turbulent landscape. But they weren't just focused on internal affairs, were they? Didn't they also make a splash on the international stage?
Absolutely. The Safavids were key players in the global arena of their time. Their empire controlled vital trade routes connecting East and West. This made them a crucial link in the flow of goods and ideas.
Ah, so they were sitting on a gold mine, literally and figuratively. That must have made them very attractive to, well, let's say ambitious neighbors.
You bet. And one of their most significant relationships, or maybe we should say rivalries, was with the Ottoman Empire, their powerful neighbor to the west.
Now, this is where my knowledge gets a bit fuzzy. Remind me, what was at the root of this Ottoman-Safavid rivalry? Was it purely about territory, or was there more going on?
Well, it was a clash of empires, really, fueled by a mix of factors. Certainly, territorial ambitions played a role, with both empires vying for control of strategic regions. But religion added another, layer of tension. The Ottomans were champions of Sunni Islam,
Right.
while the Safavids, as we've discussed, embraced Shia Islam as their state religion.
Okay, so a religious divide superimposed on this already tense geopolitical landscape. Sounds like a powder keg.
And explode it did, leading to a series of wars and proxy conflicts that really shaped the course of history in the region.
Wow.
But it's important to remember this rivalry didn't preclude, moments of cooperation and even some cultural exchange.
So it wasn't just constant all-out war. There were moments of maybe détente, even mutual admiration.
Exactly. Think of it as a complex dance, with moments of both conflict and cooperation. And this dynamic really played a role in shaping the Safavids' interactions with another major power on the world stage, Europe.
Ah, Europe. This is where things get really interesting. We're talking about two worlds that, at least on the surface, seem so different, so far apart. What drew them together?
Well, for the Europeans, the Safavids represented both an opportunity and a potential threat. They controlled those vital trade routes, offering access to the riches of the East, silks, spices, all those luxury goods that were really coveted in Europe.
So the Safavids had something the Europeans really wanted. But what about the threat? What was the threat?
Well, the Europeans, particularly those who saw themselves as defenders of Christendom, were also wary of the Ottomans. They were seen as this powerful and expansionist Islamic force. And that's where the Safavids, as rivals of the Ottomans, became strategically important.
I see. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. So the Europeans were looking at the Safavids as potential allies against the Ottomans.
Precisely. And the Safavids, well, they weren't really averse to playing this game.
My bad.
They saw European interest as a way to, bolster their own position against the Ottomans, to secure trade advantages, even to access new technologies.
So we've got diplomacy, trade, strategic maneuvering.
Right.
It sounds like the Safavids were walking a tightrope here,
Yeah.
trying to balance their interests against these powerful European players.
And they did it with remarkable skill. They understood the art of diplomacy. They sent envoys to European courts, forged alliances, and even incorporated European artistic styles and military technologies into their own culture.
It sounds like a cultural fusion was happening.
Yeah.
Was this just about political strategy, or did the Safavids admire aspects of European culture?
That's a great question, and one that historians are still debating. While the Safavids were certainly pragmatic in their dealings with Europe, there's also evidence that they were genuinely intrigued by European art, science, and even fashion.
I'm picturing those like lavish Safavid miniatures, but with a European nobleman just hidden off in the corner.
You're not far off. There are some examples of European motifs appearing in Safavid art and architecture. And some Safavid rulers even adopted elements of European dress and courtly etiquette.
Fascinating. It's amazing to see how these two seemingly distinct worlds were influencing each other, exchanging ideas, even borrowing elements of style. But, all this talk of powerful rulers and this international intrigue makes me wonder, what about the everyday people in the Safavid Empire? What were their lives like? Did they benefit from all this diplomacy and cultural exchange?
That's a crucial question, and it's one we'll delve deeper into as we continue our exploration of the Safavids. Because behind the grand narratives of empires and rulers lie the stories of the people who lived, worked, and really shaped this dynasty.
Well, listeners, we've only just begun to explore the Safavid world, but I think we can all agree this is going to be one fascinating deep dive. Stay tuned as we uncover more secrets of this dynasty. The dynasty that defied the odds, built an empire on diversity, and left a legacy that still resonates today.
It's those everyday lives, those human stories that really bring the Safavid era to life.
Right.
Because while the rulers were, playing their games of power and diplomacy,
Right.
ordinary people were just going about their daily business. Building communities, crafting goods, and just contributing to this really vibrant and dynamic society.
It's easy to get caught up in the big picture, like the rise and fall of empires. But you're right. It's the lives of the people that really give those narratives meaning. So let's zoom in a bit and explore the social fabric of the Safavid Empire.
Okay.
We've already talked about how incredibly diverse it was, with a real tapestry of ethnicities and religions all coexisting within its borders.
Yeah.
How did this diversity play out, on the ground in people's daily lives?
Or imagine strolling through a bustling Safavid city like Isfahan. You'd hear a mix of languages. You'd see people in a variety of different clothing styles.
Wow.
Encounter a range of religious practices, all coexisting within this, vibrant urban space.
It sounds like a true melting pot, like
Right.
a precursor to the cosmopolitan cities we see today. But how did the Safavid rulers manage this diversity? Was it completely harmonious, or were there tensions bubbling under the surface?
Well, of course, no society is without its tensions, right?
Right.
But the Safavids were, for the most part, really tolerant rulers.
Hmm.
They understood that trying to impose like a single rigid system on such a diverse population would just be a recipe for disaster.
So instead of forcing conformity, they embrace the differences.
Yeah, exactly. They allowed different communities to like maintain their own customs and languages, even legal systems to a certain extent, as long as they, remain loyal to the Safavid state.
Okay.
This pragmatic approach was really key to their success in maintaining stability and fostering that sense of shared identity within this incredibly diverse empire.
It sounds like they were masters of finding that balance between, like, unity and diversity,
Hmm.
allowing people to hold on to their distinct identities while still feeling part of a larger whole.
Precisely. And this approach wasn't just about, political expediency. It also reflected a deep understanding of the practical benefits of diversity.
Hmm.
The Safavids recognized that different communities brought different skills and expertise, which really contributed to the empire's overall, economic and cultural vibrancy.
So it wasn't just about tolerating differences, it was about actively valuing them, seeing them as assets rather than liabilities.
Exactly. And this open-minded approach is reflected in the flourishing of arts, crafts, and trade during the Safavid era.
Right.
Think of those exquisite Persian carpets, woven with intricate designs and vibrant colors,
Yeah.
or the delicate miniature paintings, those depicting scenes of courtly life, battles, even romantic tales.
Yeah, those carpets are incredible. I remember seeing one in a museum, and I was just like mesmerized by the detail. It was like looking into another world. It
Right.
was incredible.
And that artistry wasn't confined to just, the elite. The Safavids really encouraged the development of crafts and trade, recognizing their importance for, the empire's economic prosperity. They supported guilds and workshops. They even established caravanserais, those roadside inns that provided lodging for merchants traveling along those vast trade routes.
So they were really investing in infrastructure, creating this network that facilitated the flow of goods and people.
Exactly. And this focus on trade and commerce brought a lot of prosperity to many within the empire. It wasn't just the rulers and elites who benefited. Ordinary people had opportunities to improve their lives through hard work and skill.
It sounds like a society that, while not without its challenges, still offered opportunities for advancement, like a chance to participate in a thriving economy.
Yeah, it was. And let's not forget about the cultural exchange happening within this very diverse empire.
Right.
Different communities weren't living in isolation. They were interacting, sharing ideas, even blending their traditions.
That's where the magic happens. When different cultures come together, new ideas spark, and creativity just flourishes.
Yeah.
Did this cultural fusion leave a mark on, like, Safavid art and architecture?
Oh, absolutely. You can see it in the blending of architectural styles, the incorporation of motifs from different cultures, even in the development of unique culinary traditions.
Wow.
The Safavid world was this real melting pot of flavors, designs, ideas.
It sounds like they were creating this, like, truly cosmopolitan culture centuries ahead of its time. But all this talk of flourishing trade and vibrant cities and this incredible cultural exchange makes me wonder, what about the darker side of this story? I mean, every empire has its, shadows, its challenges, its struggles for power.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. No empire, however prosperous or seemingly stable, is immune to internal conflicts and external pressures. And the Safavid dynasty was no exception.
Right.
While their strategy of inclusivity and tolerance certainly contributed to their longevity, they definitely faced their fair share of challenges.
Okay, let's unpack those challenges. What were the major threats to the Safavid Empire?
Well, one of the most persistent threats, as we've already discussed, was their rivalry with the Ottoman Empire.
Right.
This rivalry flared up periodically, leading to devastating wars that, drained resources and destabilized the whole region.
Wow. Those wars must have taken a huge toll,
Hmm.
not just in terms of casualties, but also on the lives of ordinary people.
Absolutely. War always has its human cost. And for the Safavids, these conflicts with the Ottomans really required them to, maintain a very strong and well-equipped military.
Right.
And that placed a significant burden on their economy.
So even in times of peace, they were constantly preparing for the next conflict. Sounds like a precarious way to live.
It was a delicate balancing act. They had to be strong enough to deter their enemies, but not so militaristic that they, alienated their own people or drained their resources.
Right.
And on top of those external threats, they also faced internal challenges.
What kind of internal challenges are we talking about? Rebellions, power struggles within, the ruling elite, something else entirely.
All of the above, really. Remember, the Safavid Empire was vast and diverse, with different regions and ethnic groups kind of vying for power and influence.
Right.
Maintaining unity in that environment was a constant challenge.
So they were like jugglers, trying to keep all these different balls in the air, external threats, internal divisions, economic pressures. It's no wonder that even the most successful empires eventually crumble.
You've hit the nail on the head. And for the Safavids, their decline was a gradual process, like a slow unraveling of the factors that had, made them strong and stable.
So it wasn't a sudden collapse. It was more like a slow fade from power. What were the key factors that led to their downfall?
Well, as we discussed, their military strength, while once formidable, really began to wane over time. They struggled to keep pace with the advances in military technology, particularly like the increasing use of gunpowder weapons by their rivals.
The classic story of an empire clinging to the old ways while the world is changing around them.
Exactly. And as their military power declined, they became more vulnerable to external threats and internal rebellions.
To like a domino effect, one weakness leading to another.
Precisely. And on top of the military challenges, they faced a series of succession crises.
Right.
Remember, the Safavid dynasty was built on strong, centralized rule, but when there was uncertainty over who would inherit the throne, it really created instability and opened the door for these power struggles within the court.
Oh, those succession battles can get nasty. It's like a Shakespearean drama on a grand scale.
Right. And these internal conflicts just weakened the Safavid state even further, making it more difficult to respond to, like, the external threats and the economic challenges they were facing.
Sounds like a perfect storm of factors. Military decline, internal divisions, and a weakening economy.
Exactly. And ultimately, in the early 18th century, these pressures proved too much for the Safavids to bear. They fell to an invasion by the Hotaki dynasty, a group of Afghans who exploited the Safavids' weakened state and captured their capital city of Isfahan.
Wow. It's a reminder that even the most powerful empires are not invincible. They're all built on foundations that can shift and crumble over time. But even though the Safavid dynasty itself came to an end, their impact on Iran and the wider region was really profound.
Oh, absolutely.
He was enduring.
Their legacy lives on in Iran's cultural heritage, religious identity, and its place on the world stage. They shaped a dynasty that defied the odds, embraced diversity, and left a mark that continues to fascinate us centuries later.
We've been focusing on the Safavids as this powerful force in their own right, but I'm also really curious about their role in shaping modern Iran.
Okay,
it's easy to see them as like a distant chapter in history books. But how did their actions continue to resonate in the Iran we know today? It's amazing to think that decisions made centuries ago can still shape a nation's identity today.
So how did the Safavids, with all their, complexities and contradictions, influence the Iran we know today? Well, one of their most lasting legacies is the establishment of Shia Islam as the dominant religion in Iran. Before the Safavids, Iran's religious landscape was much more diverse,
Right.
but they made a very conscious decision to elevate Shia Islam to state religion status. And that had a really profound impact on the country's cultural and political development.
Yeah. I remember from our earlier conversation that this wasn't just a simple imposition of, a pre-existing faith. It sounds like Safavids really actively shaped and molded Shia Islam to fit their vision for the empire.
You're exactly right. They promoted very specific interpretations of Shia theology, built grand mosques and religious institutions.
Wow.
And they supported, a growing class of Shia scholars and clerics. Over time, this really led to the development of a very distinctly Iranian form of Shia Islam, intertwined with, Persian culture and traditions.
So they weren't just adopting a religion, they were really creating a unique blend of faith and culture that resonated with the Iranian people.
Yeah.
And continues to shape their identity today.
Exactly. And this, religious transformation had political implications too.
Of course.
The Safavid rulers used their role as protectors of Shia Islam to legitimize their rule, to rally support among the population, even to justify their conflicts with their Sunni rivals, like we talked about, the Ottomans.
It's fascinating how religion can be such a powerful force, shaping not just personal beliefs, but also political structures, international relations.
Absolutely. The Safavids were really masters at harnessing that power of religion to achieve their goals. But their legacy goes beyond just, the religious sphere.
Right.
They also played a really crucial role in shaping modern Iran's sense of national identity and its territorial integrity.
Okay, how did they do that? Didn't we talk earlier about how diverse their empire was, made up of all these different regions and ethnic groups?
We did, but they understood the importance of fostering that sense of unity within that diversity.
Hmm.
They really promoted Persian language and culture, even as they allowed other languages and traditions to flourish.
Right.
And they also invested in these infrastructure projects that connected different parts of the empire,
Yeah.
building roads and bridges and irrigation systems that facilitated, trade and communication.
So they were literally building the foundations of a unified nation.
Yeah.
They understood that those physical connections were essential to strengthening cultural and political bonds.
Exactly. And they were really good at projecting this image of power and grandeur.
Hmm.
They built magnificent palaces and gardens and mosques, showcasing, the wealth and sophistication of their empire.
Right.
These really architectural marvels not only impressed foreign visitors, but also instilled a sense of pride and identity among their own people.
It's like they were creating a brand for their empire, using architecture and art as like tools of propaganda to reinforce their, legitimacy and authority.
That's a great point. They understood the power of symbols and imagery.
Yeah.
And those symbols, whether it's, the iconic dome of the Sheikh Lotfallah Mosque in Isfahan, or the intricate designs of Persian carpets, they continue to evoke a sense of Iranian identity and cultural pride today.
It's incredible how these tangible pieces of the past can still resonate with people today.
Yeah.
We've explored the Safavids' impact on Iran's religion, its culture, its sense of nationhood. But didn't they also play a role in shaping the country's, economy?
Absolutely. They inherited an empire that was very strategically located at the crossroads of these, trade routes connecting East and West.
Right.
And they really capitalized on this, promoting trade, supporting craft production. They even developed this really sophisticated system of coinage and finance.
Wow. So they weren't just like conquerors and patrons of the arts. They were savvy economic strategists, too.
Precisely. They understood that economic prosperity was really essential to their empire's strength and stability.
Right.
They encouraged the production of, luxury goods like silk textiles and carpets, things that were highly sought after in international markets. They also established royal workshops producing exquisite ceramics and metalwork, all these other crafts, further enhancing their reputation for artistry and luxury.
I'm starting to see a pattern here. They were really masters at weaving together these different threads: religion, culture, economics.
Yeah.
They were creating this strong and vibrant tapestry that defined their empire and left this, lasting legacy on Iran.
That's a wonderful way to put it. They really were master weavers, blending diverse elements to create a really unique and enduring legacy that continues to shape Iran's identity and its place in the world today.
Well, listeners, we've journeyed through the rise and fall of the Safavid dynasty, explored their incredible cultural achievements, delved into their complex relationship with Europe, and uncovered their lasting impact on modern Iran. It's been quite a journey.
It has. It's a story that, reminds us that history is not just a collection of dates and names,
Right.
but it's a tapestry of human stories, of triumphs and tragedies, and of these enduring legacies that continue to shape the world we live in today.
And as we wrap up our deep dive into the Safavid world, we hope you'll continue to explore, to question, and to uncover those hidden gems of history that connect us to our past and illuminate our present. Thanks for joining us.